My mother and stepfather punished me brutally, beating me with a belt simply because I refused to serve his lunch like a servant. My mother insisted he was the king of the house and I was nothing but a slave. With only $1 and a fractured arm, I ran away. What happened afterward changed everything, and eventually left both of them absolutely terrified. My stepfather, Marcus, slammed the plate onto the floor, rice scattering across the tiles. "You don't serve me, you don't eat," Marcus growled, pulling at his belt. My mother didn't flinch, she folded her arms and nodded. "Marcus is the king," she said coldly. "You're just the help." I backed away, clutching my arm, knowing this time would be different. It began with something so ordinary: lunch. I had cooked rice, lentils, and cucumber slices, placing the plate on the counter. Marcus sat at the table, arms crossed, staring at the food like it had insulted him. "You expect me to get up and serve myself?" Marcus asked, his voice sharp. I turned slowly. "I made the food. It's right there." Marcus rose from his chair, the scrape of wood against tile echoing through the room. My mother didn't blink. "You think you're too good to serve me now?" Marcus said, stepping closer. I held my ground. "I'm not your servant." That was all it took. Marcus ripped the belt from his waist with a loud snap. He swung it before I could move. The leather cracked against my shoulder, sending me stumbling into the table. Another strike landed across my arm. Pain shot through me, sharp and unbearable. I felt something shift, something wrong. My elbow throbbed and I dropped to my knees. "Still think you're not a servant?" Marcus spat. My mother stood nearby, arms folded, watching. "Marcus is right," she said coldly. "Respect the king." I curled into myself, trying to shield my face, but Marcus kept swinging until he grew tired. He tossed the belt onto the couch and walked away, leaving me crumpled on the floor. I dragged myself to my room, cradling my fractured arm. The silence was suffocating. No one checked on me. No one asked if I was okay. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, the pain unbearable. The house felt like a prison. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. My mother passed by once, pausing at the doorway. "Clean up the mess when you're done crying," she said, then left. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. Morning came. I waited until Marcus and my mother left, their footsteps fading down the hallway. I opened my drawer, searching for anything useful. All I found was a crumpled dollar bill tucked beneath an old notebook. $1. That was all I had. I stuffed it into my pocket, pulled on a hoodie to hide the bruises, and climbed out the window. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't write a note. I just ran. Every step hurt, but I didn't stop. I walked until the houses turned into storefronts, until the familiar streets faded into unfamiliar ones. By evening, the sky turned gray. I found a narrow alley behind a diner, the smell of grease and old bread lingering in the air. I sat against the wall, knees pulled to my chest, watching people walk past without noticing me. My stomach growled. A man tossed a half-eaten sandwich into the trash nearby. I waited until he left, then pulled it out. It wasn't pride, it was survival. I ate slowly, each bite reminding me how long it had been since my last meal. The cold crept in and I curled tighter, trying to stay warm. A stray cat wandered by, sniffed my shoes, then disappeared into the shadows. I didn't sleep much. Every sound made me flinch. Every footstep felt like danger. But I made it through the night. And somewhere between the hunger and the fear, I felt something else. Something small but steady. A flicker of strength. I had escaped Marcus. I was alone. But I was still here. Morning light crept into the alley, painting the cracked walls with pale gold. My stomach twisted with hunger and my fractured arm throbbed with every movement. I was still sitting there, knees pulled to my chest, when the back door of the diner swung open. An older woman stepped out, carrying a tray of scraps. She wore a faded apron, her gray hair tied back neatly, and her eyes scanned the alley before landing on me. For a moment I froze, expecting her to shoo me away. Instead, she tilted her head, her expression softening. "You look like you could use a warm meal," she said gently. I didn't answer right away. Trust wasn't something I could give easily. But the kindness in her voice was different. It wasn't pity, it wasn't mockery. It was genuine. She set the tray down beside me. "Go on. It's fresh." The smell of eggs and toast filled the air. My hands trembled as I reached for the food, my eyes darting to hers, searching for hidden motives. She just smiled, leaning against the wall as if she had all the time in the world. "What's your name?" she asked. I hesitated, then whispered, "Anna." "Well, Anna," she said, "I'm Mrs. Carter. You'll be safe here." Her warmth seeped into me like sunlight through a window. For the first time in days I felt seen. Mrs. Carter didn't stop at food. After I finished eating, she asked me to follow her inside. The diner smelled of coffee and butter, the clatter of plates filling the air. She introduced me to the staff, most of whom gave me curious looks but said nothing. "You can help clean tables," she said. "It's not much, but it's honest work." I nodded, though my fractured arm made even simple tasks painful. Carrying trays was impossible, so I wiped tables, refilled napkin holders, and swept floors. Each movement sent sharp jolts through my arm, but I gritted my teeth and kept going. The customers barely noticed me. Some smiled politely, others ignored me completely. But every coin Mrs. Carter handed me at the end of the day felt like a victory. At night, she arranged for me to sleep in a small room above the diner. It wasn't much, just a bed, a lamp, and a window overlooking the street, but it was safe. I no longer had to curl up in alleys listening for footsteps. Still, hiding my past was exhausting. When people asked where I came from, I dodged the question. I couldn't bear to say Marcus's name, or admit the truth about my mother. Each day was a test. My arm ached, my heart carried scars, but I kept working. Survival had become my routine. Weeks passed and slowly my body began to heal. The swelling in my arm went down, though the pain lingered. Mrs. Carter insisted I see a doctor, and though I resisted at first, I eventually agreed. The fracture was real, but with rest and care it would mend. I wore a sling for weeks, learning to do everything with one hand. It was frustrating, but each small success, tying my shoes, carrying a plate, felt monumental. With every paycheck I saved a little. The first time I bought something for myself, a pair of shoes that weren't torn, I nearly cried. They weren't fancy, but they were mine. I began to make friends among the staff. A young waitress named Emily often slipped me extra bread, and the cook, Mr. Harris, taught me how to make pancakes during slow mornings. Their kindness chipped away at the walls I had built around myself. For the first time I laughed. Not loudly, not often, but enough to remind myself I was still human. One evening, as I stood by the diner window watching the rain, I realized something had changed. I was no longer the girl Marcus had beaten into silence. I was no longer the shadow my mother dismissed. I was Anna, someone who had endured, someone who had survived. Independence reshaped me. I learned to rely on myself, to trust my instincts, to find strength in small victories. The fractured arm was healing, but the deeper wounds, the ones carved by cruelty, were slowly closing too. I began planning for the future. I didn't want to just survive, I wanted to live. I wanted to build a life where no one could call me a servant, where no one could strip me of dignity. The thought of Marcus and my mother still haunted me, but instead of fear I felt determination. I would never let them define me again. One afternoon, as I wiped down tables, I overheard two women talking near the counter. "They helped me file everything," one said. "The legal aid group is incredible. They stand up for people who've been hurt." My heart skipped. Legal aid. Abuse victims. Justice. I froze, cloth in hand, listening as they described how the group offered support, guidance, and protection. A fire ignited inside me. I had run away to survive, but survival wasn't enough. Marcus and my mother had tried to break me, and I couldn't let their cruelty go unanswered. That night, I lay in my small room staring at the ceiling. The decision weighed heavily on me. Reaching out meant reopening wounds, reliving pain. But it also meant reclaiming power. I whispered to myself, "It's time." The quiet fire inside me grew stronger. I wasn't just a runaway anymore. I was someone ready to fight back. I kept walking even though every step sent a dull ache up my injured arm. The street ahead looked blurry, not because of tears but because everything felt unreal, like I had stepped out of my own life and into someone else's without warning. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, yet I felt a light coldness along my spine, a leftover shiver from everything that had happened. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't turn back. Car horns sounded faintly in the distance. Children laughed somewhere behind a row of houses. Those everyday sounds felt strange to me, as if they belonged to a world I had never been part of. I held my arm close to my body, trying not to draw attention. The sidewalk stretched endlessly, broken here and there with patches of weeds pushing through the cracks. My feet were sore from walking, but I didn't dare rest. Resting meant thinking, and thinking still hurt more than my arm. After a while, the neighborhood changed. The houses grew smaller, some with peeling paint, some with rusted fences leaning forward as if tired of standing straight. A small dog barked from behind a gate, startling me, and I stepped back quickly. When I did, a sharp pain shot through my wrist and I let out a quiet gasp. "You all right, honey?" The voice came from across the street. An older woman stood on her porch, folding laundry. She tilted her head as she looked at me, soft eyes, careful, not prying but concerned. I froze. I didn't know whether to answer or keep walking. Strangers scared me almost as much as home did. Before I could say anything, she reached for a small bottle of water sitting beside her basket. "It's warm today. Come take this." Her tone was gentle, steady. No anger. No demands. I hesitated, but the dryness in my throat made the decision for me. I crossed the street slowly and took the bottle with my good hand. "Thank you," I whispered. "You look worn out. Need a place to sit for a minute?" she asked. My heart raced. Sitting meant staying. Staying meant explaining. I wasn't ready for that, so I shook my head. "I'll keep going. I just need a little water." She didn't push. She only nodded with a soft smile. "Take care of yourself, dear. And if you ever need help, this house is here." Her kindness lingered in my chest long after I walked away. It was such a small gesture, yet it felt like someone had gently laid a warm blanket over my fear. The sun began to lower by the time I reached a row of small shops. I slowed my steps near a tiny convenience store with a faded blue sign. A man sat behind the counter inside, flipping through a magazine. My legs trembled as I leaned against the doorframe, trying to rest without making it obvious I had nowhere else to go. "You sick?" the man asked without looking up. "No," I said softly. "Just tired." He finally glanced at me and his eyes paused on the way I held my arm. "You injured?" I swallowed. "I fell." He nodded once as if he heard that sort of thing all the time. "Sit there." He pointed to an empty plastic chair near the window. I hesitated. "I don't have money to buy anything." "Didn't ask you to," he replied, turning his page. I sat. My arm throbbed in waves, but the chair felt good, steady and safe. A few minutes later, he pushed a small pack of crackers across the counter toward me. "Here." "I only have $1, I said. "Keep it," he murmured. The second act of kindness felt even stranger than the first. All my life, help came with conditions. Punishments. Demands. But here were strangers offering things freely, like it was simply part of being human. After resting, I continued walking until I reached an older part of town where the buildings looked worn but peaceful. I found a small shelter with a sign that read Community Night Center. The lights inside glowed softly and tired-looking people walked in with blankets over their shoulders. I stayed outside for several minutes, debating whether I belonged there. Finally, I stepped inside. A volunteer at the front desk glanced up. "You need a safe place tonight?" she asked. I nodded. She gave me a gentle smile and pointed toward a small room with chairs arranged in circles. The room smelled faintly of warm soup. People talked quietly among themselves. Nobody stared at me. Nobody questioned me. I found a corner and sat on the floor, hugging my knees. As the night grew deeper, the noise faded, leaving a calm silence that wrapped around me like a soft shawl. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. Over the next few days, I learned small but important things. How to wash my clothes using a sink at the shelter, how to stretch a single meal, how to wrap my arm with a makeshift sling to ease the pressure. The quiet nights helped me hear my own thoughts clearly. It was both uncomfortable and freeing. I realized I had been living so long under someone else's rules that I had forgotten I had choices. One afternoon, while sitting outside the center, I noticed a flyer fluttering on the bulletin board. It advertised free medical checkups. My arm needed attention, so I decided to go. The clinic was simple, run by friendly volunteers. A doctor gently examined my arm. "This wasn't from a simple fall," he said softly. I stared at the floor. He didn't push for details. Instead, he wrapped my arm carefully and told me how to care for it. "You're strong," he added. "Don't forget that." Those words struck something deep inside me, something small but powerful. A few days later, I met a young woman at the center who worked at a local bakery. They need someone to help with packing boxes, she told me. It's light work. If you want, I can ask. The thought of earning even a little money made my heart lift. Yes, I said. The bakery was warm and smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. The owner, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, showed me how to fold boxes and pack pastries. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't watch me like I might break something. He simply trusted me. Day by day I grew steadier. I earned small wages, bought simple meals, and even found a tiny room to rent at the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a bed, a chair, and a window, but it felt like mine. As the weeks passed, my confidence returned slowly, like sunlight after a long winter. I walked straighter. I spoke louder. I smiled more. And then came the day that shifted everything, quietly, unexpectedly. A single moment that showed me I was no longer the frightened child they once controlled. And it was that moment that began to unsettle my mother and stepfather in ways they never expected.